ParkfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Tuesday morning, October 21st. A very interesting weather pattern going forward through the end of October into the early part of November. Lots of potential on the field. Multiple players, including a tropical storm that's likely to become a hurricane over the next several days, and that would become named Melissa. Perhaps even eventually a major hurricane over the northwestern Caribbean or the southwestern Atlantic Ocean. At the same time, we have a powerful jet stream that will cross through the northern part of the Pacific Ocean and reach the Pacific Northwest late this week into the weekend, and that jet stream ends up buckling, diving to the south as a deep upper level trough forms over the middle part of the nation by the middle part of next week. At the same time, we'll have very strong blocking in the atmosphere setting up over central Canada. And you put all these ingredients together, mix in some cold air, some very chilly air, and you have a potential explosive situation later next week into the following weekend, which is the early part of November. I want to start off here by showing a couple different computer forecast models, both of which are probably unrealistic in what they're showing here, but they both send to me a red flag that they're sniffing out this potential explosive situation later next week into the early part of November. Doesn't mean it will happen, but still, the potential is there. This is the total rainfall amounts over a 5-day period from yesterday's European model run, and it is just putting out stunningly high 5-day totals here. Again, this is by the middle of next weekend, November 1st, November 2nd time frame for the prior 5-day period, and we're seeing some incredibly high amounts here. Unrealistic, yes, but to me it sends a red flag that the European model, in this particular model run anyway, is sniffing out what could be a powerful storm later next week into the early part of November. Now, European model is not the only one with some wild weather conditions here. Let's now shift to last night's run of the Canadian model. And we'll walk through beginning on Sunday, October 26th, and just take a look at what the last night's run of the Canadian model has done in this particular situation. First of all, here is that potential hurricane. Again, it would become named Melissa. Now, this is all the way at a week from right now, next Tuesday. All of this is in speculation phase, but the ingredients are there for a very energetic pattern later next week into the following week. We have strong high pressure over southeastern Canada. This likely to be a hurricane. Stays off the East Coast at this particular time frame here in the middle part of next week. Then it starts taking a turn to the north and west, encounters some incoming cold air, and the Canadian model from last night dumps a decent amount of snow in some of those higher elevations of the northeastern states by the end of next week. This is by around Friday, Halloween day. So again, the European model from yesterday morning dumped tremendous amounts of rainfall in this pattern for later next week. The Canadian model run from last night has a hurricane moving to the north and west towards New England into some cold air with some snow accumulations here, both of which unrealistic, but suggest to me certainly red flags. Models are sensing out at least a potential of what could happen later next week into the following week and into the early part of November. Doesn't mean something big will happen, but certainly that prospect is on the table. Now let's get a little bit more specific as to what these ingredients are that could lead to this very energetic or this volatile weather pattern later next week. First of all, let's take a look here at a strong tropical wave here in the eastern part of the Caribbean. Very slow mover, and that is kind of a key factor. I think the GFS model is actually moving this out of the Caribbean too quickly. And later on in this video discussion, we'll kind of walk through last night's run of the European model. I think it has a better handle on this tropical situation. Yesterday, we showed the water temperatures here across the Caribbean Sea above normal, certainly fully capable of supporting intensification into a named tropical storm would be Melissa, and it's fully supportive of a hurricane here. And again, I do believe this becomes a hurricane once it gets out into the central or western part of the Caribbean Sea, where the water temperatures are 85, 86, 87 degrees. It even has the potential, would not rule this out, of becoming a major hurricane at some point, maybe in the northwestern Caribbean in several days time frame, major hurricane being Category 3 or higher. So this is certainly a key player here, and we'll have to monitor this closely over the next several days. Ultimately, likely crosses Cuba, moves out into the southwestern Atlantic Ocean, and then we'll see if it does indeed have any kind of an impact on the U.S. East Coast. Well, let's now walk through last night's 0Z run of the European model here. And again, we'll point out several important factors here going forward for this volatile weather pattern, setting up for latter part of next week, going into the following week and the early part of November. First of all, we're looking here at a North America view. I wanted to look at a North America view rather than just a continental U.S. because there's so many players on the field here of importance here going forward into this potential big-time weather pattern for later next week. We're looking at 250 millibar winds, the jet stream level at the top of the atmosphere here. Where we see areas of purple, that represents some very, very strong winds in this particular model, 140 knots and higher here over the northern Pacific. This is the Aleutian Island chain here. Now, let's move forward here. I want to first focus right here, the northern Pacific Ocean. This is a powerful jet streak here, no doubt. We're seeing some colors here representing as high as 175, 180, 190 knots here, cutting across the northern Pacific by the middle part of this week here. And that basically is what we call a zonal flow at this particular stage of this jet stream. In other words, this line right here represents latitude and this zonal flow moving basically from west to east. That's what goes on initially with this powerful jet stream by the end of this week over the northern Pacific Ocean. Then it moves slowly to the south and east, again still maintaining that general west to east flow here right along this dotted line, this dashed line right here. So it's kind of moving parallel to the latitude line here, west to east at this particular stage. By the upcoming weekend, or during the upcoming weekend, it pushes into northern California and other areas of the Pacific Northwest. Again, a powerful jet stream. Then it starts to what we call buckle, basically takes on more of a meridional flow, more of a longitudinal flow rather than a latitudinal flow, as a deep upper level trough here forms over the middle part of the nation. We'll see it here. Again, it starts to kind of buckle and wraps around an intense upper level trough that will set up by the middle part of next week over the middle part of the nation. And this jet streak ultimately ends up as kind of a powerful jet streak right along the eastern seaboard here. This is by next Friday, October 31st, Halloween Day. So this originated over the northern Pacific, moved from west to east into the Pacific Northwest, and then kind of buckled and dives to the south all the way down to the Gulf, and then pushes up along the Atlantic seaboard. That is certainly a key player. Now, let's focus in on the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern, because blocking is also a big player here, setting up for the latter part of next week. By blocking, I mean you get such strong and slow-moving high pressure or higher heights than normal over a particular region. In this particular case, it'll be central Canada, that it kind of slows down all the movement of low-pressure systems. A blocking pattern, and whenever you have a blocking pattern of this magnitude, we'll see the magnitude in a moment here, strange things can happen. You can have a very slow-moving storm system. In this particular case, that deep upper-level trough over the middle of the nation will slow down. At the same time, you have that tropical storm, likely a Hurricane Melissa, off the eastern seaboard. But some of that tropical moisture can feed back here. We'll see the reasons why I suspect that could happen here. Now, moving forward here through tomorrow and into the latter part of the weekend. First thing, you can see this deepening upper level trough out over the northern Pacific. That's associated with that powerful jet streak out there. Then we get into the end of the week and into the upcoming weekend. This is the time, just look at how tight these lines are here. That's indicative of the very, very strong winds in the upper part of the atmosphere. That jet streak slams into the Pacific Northwest and northern part of California by the weekend, likely with some rain in the low-lying areas and snow in the higher elevation areas. Then we start to focus in on central Canada, right in this area right here, and take a look at the blocking pattern that sets up. When you see purples showing up here, that's almost off the charts here in terms of the heights, the higher heights compared to normal. This is anomalously high heights here, higher pressures here, also warmer than normal temperatures in this area. This is your significant blocking that sets up by the early and middle part of next week. And that tends to force this jet streak to take that dive and down to the Gulf region. At the same time, this upper level trough dives far to the south and east. So by the time we get to the middle part of next week, this is all the way out a week from tomorrow. We're looking at October 29th. You have multiple players on the field here. You have a strong block over central and eastern Canada, represented here by the orange and red, the higher heights to normal. You have this deepening upper level trough over the south central states, and that strong jet streak supporting this upper level trough. And then you have this reflection at 500 millibars of the tropical system. Again, by this time, likely to be Hurricane Melissa, maybe even a major hurricane at this time, about to cross over Cuba. And then we'll see what the interaction is between this deep trough over the southeastern states, the tropical system, and you still have that block here. This is now all the way out to the end of next week, Halloween Day. Lots of important players on the field on this particular 500 millibar map. Now, other player on the field will be a chilly air mass feeding into this whole system here. So you have multiple ingredients that should set up some wild weather later next week. First of all, we're looking at the 850 millibar temperature anomaly patterns here from last night's 0Z run of the European model. We have a cold air mass, colder than normal, cutting across the Great Lakes into the Mid-Atlantic region over the next couple of days. A cold front passes through the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S. tonight with some showers. Nothing significant though, not a beneficial rainfall by any means. And then it's cool for the rest of the week from the Great Lakes to the Mid-Atlantic to the Northeast U.S. with cooler than normal temperatures Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This is quite an impressive cool air mass here setting up for the second half of this week. And then we'll go into the upcoming weekend. Here we go by Friday and then into the upcoming weekend. And this is the time period where that jet streak slams into the northern part of California. And we'll kind of go quickly here. I mentioned earlier, we have that tremendous block in the atmosphere, those higher heights than normal, higher pressures than normal. You also have significantly warmer temperatures than normal up over central Canada here, and that sets up by the early part of next week. And then we'll kind of move forward here, and we'll see the colder than normal air mass kind of dive to the south and east, associated with that deepening upper level trough that dives to the south and east. This is the middle part of next week, and then we go into the end of next week. This is all the way out to Friday, Halloween Day, next Friday, October 31st. Colder than normal air pushes all the way down into the Gulf region. And then once this whole mess passes on by, really see an influx of colder than normal air in the early part of November. This is now a week from this coming Sunday. We're looking all the way out to Sunday, November 2nd here, and you have an impressive, widespread cold shot of air, colder than normal for this time of the year, moving into the central and eastern states for that first week of November. Well, let's now walk through the surface forecast maps. Again, the North America view, and all these maps, by the way, from tropicaltidbits.com. This is, again, using the 0Z run of the GFS. So let's just kind of quickly walk through these maps here. And again, we have this colder than normal air mass about to move into the Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, northeastern part of the nation. There will be a strong cold frontal passage overnight tonight, causing some showers, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, but nothing at all significant, not a beneficial rainfall by any means. Some showers with that cold front, and then basically breezy and cool conditions follow at midweek, and it stays cooler than normal, really from Wednesday right through Sunday in the Great Lakes, in the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast U.S., and then we'll get quickly to the end of the week here, into the late week here. We have this Pacific jet, powerful jet streak ready to slam into the Pacific Northwest, really from Northern California northward. And here is a strong frontal system that no doubt will cause some decent rainfall in some of those lower elevation locations from Northern California across Washington and Oregon. This is now the beginning of the weekend. Likely to be some accumulating snow in some of the inland higher elevation locations. Quite a storm here associated with that powerful jet streak that moves into the Pacific Northwest over the upcoming weekend here and becomes a big player later next week down the road, some in the central and eastern states. Then here we go into the end of the upcoming weekend, and at this particular time here, next Monday, a week from yesterday, here is the reflection by the European model of Melissa, still over the Caribbean Sea, and I do believe it will be this slow moving. This kind of a slow movement will allow it to intensify first in a named tropical storm status, then hurricane status, and potentially even major hurricane status over the Northwest Caribbean. Now, we'll go into next week, and here we go, a week from today, next Tuesday. Here's a surface low associated with that deepening upper level trough on a high pressure over central Canada, the Hudson Bay region of Canada, associated with that blocking. And here is what could very well be a hurricane or even a major hurricane at this time, ready to cross Cuba. And here we go into the middle of next week, and now Thursday of next week. And notice here, we do have a hurricane well off the coast, but this flow of air certainly can allow for some of the tropical moisture to work its way west, northwest, towards the eastern seaboard, even with the center of the tropical system well off the coast. You have the combination of the high up here, winds blow clockwise around highs and counterclockwise around lows. So all of this is associated with that deep upper level trough right here. You have the tropical connection as well that could potentially move some tropical moisture into this whole pattern. In other words, that deep upper level trough over the continental U.S., in this case over the central and eastern U.S., can absorb some of that tropical moisture, go out a little bit farther in time. And here we go again into next Friday, Halloween Day. You have some tropical moisture potentially working its way all the way into the coast. That potentially can lead to some significant rainfall, suggested by yesterday morning's crazy European model run here. Now we'll go out a little bit farther in time here into the end of next week, and here we go into November 1st. Still have the reflection of the hurricane here at the surface level all the way out to Saturday, November 1st, and still have kind of an upper level low causing the second surface low here over the Mid-Atlantic region all the way out to a week from this Saturday. Again, we're talking about the end of next week going into the following weekend. So a volatile weather pattern setting up for the middle and latter part of next week going into the early part of November. A lot of details have to be ironed out, but there are multiple ingredients that could play a role in some wild weather later next week going into the early part of November. That's it for now. For ArcFieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.